Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here. It is Thursday, December 21st, 2023. Welcome to another episode of UnWoke Academy. I'm your host, Jonathan Broadbent. Today we're going to talk about good versus evil and happy versus anxiety. I was sort of tempted to change our graphics for today's show and maybe put like a little angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other, because I've had several people tell me over the last several months and years that at a certain point, even people who are not religious kind of default into religious sort of tones, talking about where we are in the world right now. And it does feel quite a bit like good versus evil, even to people who are not religious. And I've had people say that. And so people are using expressions and terminology, in other words, that's usually kind of the parlance of religious folks. So I want to talk a little bit about the choices that we make and the choices that we have in the context of the world and what we shape and where we go from here. It is my worldview right now, looking at what's happening all over the world in the United States and from major globalist organizations like the United Nations and World Health Organization and groups like it, that we effectively have a strong desire for global communism. And actually, yes, there are people that think that I'm exaggerating or being facetious or I don't know, something. But those are actually the words that are being used by some global elites, and some of the multi-billionaire kind of power-hungry folks. And you have them in every generation. There are people out there who are just power-hungry. On a related note, I've heard this expression before, and I think that it kind of holds true. And it's usually used in the form of a question: what is the most addictive thing on earth? And people will answer like, heroin or crack or whatever, alcohol. Um, the answer that I've heard from a number of people who have exposure, I guess, to some of these globalist, multinational, billionaire types is no, actually, the most addictive thing is control over other people's lives. That feeling that you can control tens or hundreds or thousands or millions of people, and in this case, billions of people, through the machinations of United Nations and World Health Organization and groups and organizations like it. It has to be an incredible power rush for people that have everything, that have their own private jets and own islands and yachts and boats and live above the law. I think that that is the last thing. That's that power hungry, that feeling comes from a warped brain that really has had no limits. And I believe that that's where we are. And tied to that, clearly, we see the actions of things like pharmaceutical companies affecting healthcare and the delivery of, I can't even call it healthcare with a straight face anymore. That what used to be healthcare, it's actually damage care now. We're at the point clearly where I argue that much of what is done and advocated for in the commercials and just the vast array of new pills that we're constantly supposed to be taking, that health is not even on the top 50 list of objectives. If health were, then when you go in and talk to the doctor, they would talk to you about lifestyle and sleep and dietary habits and all those things. Um, if that comes up in conversation, I think it's just kind of lip service at this point, because there's money, big money to be made in encouraging people to actually have unhealthy lifestyles and make unhealthy choices. And the same holds true in the world of finance. The more people can be corralled into allowing their money to go into far left woke companies and causes, the more happy a few people are, and the more unhappy we, the people, the individual, the family, the I guess I keep using the term we the people, and I mean that in a global sense, not just the United States, although that term tends to kind of specific to the U.S. People, but you see all over the world that there are big groups of people in Germany and Norway and China and Korea, everywhere, in Poland, all over Europe, in France, UK, like United States, certainly Canada. I love what Canada was able to do. Was it 2 years ago with Ottawa, Canada, and the truckers fighting back against this globalist, woke left communist agenda, whatever you want to call it. Um, but there are choices, and I want to put this in the right kind of framework to hopefully encourage people. When you think about the objectives of the people out there, these big multinational globalist billionaires that want power and they want control, and they're actually proud of the fact that they've gone through and trained some of these world leaders in this sort of training protocol that puts them, they become foot soldiers of the globalist agenda. And when we know that and consider what the objective is, then I think it makes us clear headed and more rational about the choices that we make. So, thinking in those terms, you think about the world of finance and where our money is intended to go. And that is clearly being funneled as far left as possible and feeding our money, your 401k dollars, via that company that's offering the 401k, and the mutual fund, typically mutual fund managers that are selected in there. Everything leans and steers into the far left. So if you, and I keep illustrating this point, if you look at the lineup, for instance, I want to make a little finer point on this before I move on. If you look up the lineup of investment options inside your 401k or 403b, or the annuity you might have, or your stock selection that's fed to you by those cool looking little charts online and stuff, look at what's ultimately being purchased and what's being recommended. And I believe that you're going to find that those things lean heavily far left. That's a bad thing. It actually, we're allowing our money to be used to fund anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-Western values, anti-Judeo-Christian, all those things that for hundreds of years have made the West what it is. And that is, it's not perfect, but it's way better than the alternative that we seem to be moving toward. So, understanding that that's the trajectory and that's where we're headed, and that's the intention of the bad guys, then think in terms of what's presented to us. If we're comfortable and okay and happy and feel confident about the economy and education and the society as a whole, if we feel comfortable and maybe even confident, then we're going to make smarter choices. It's a known fact, and it's a manipulative tool that's at play here. The more scared people are, and the more anxious, and they feel like the earth is not stable under them, the more anxious people feel, the more likely they are to make bad choices, and they feel anxiety driven. So when it comes to really all of the above, and again, I do this in many of our conversations, but I do it for a purpose. I do it with intent. When you look at where the children in your community get their education, for instance, you have the choice of government schools, government run schools. I call them that, by the way, because clearly they're driven by government choices, top down. If they were public schools, they would be answerable to the public, and I don't believe that they are. They are answerable to corporate dollars, big money investors like the technology firms, the data mining, the publishers, teachers unions. There's so much money that flows through their construction companies, even just the massive flow of money that goes through and gets washed through schools to effectively not educate. I no longer call them public schools. I call them government schools. Anyway, I got onto a tangent there. But if you're looking at the choices that you have for your children or grandchildren or the children that are in your community, you have sort of the place that you're being steered to, and you're being sort of browbeat into allowing your children to be caught up in this government school terrible place. It's actually harming children. I argue that, and I believe that I prove it on a roughly daily basis through my actions and the research and reporting that we do at Protect Ohio Children. Remember, I'm actually one of the co-founders in Ohio of the Academic Accountability Project, where we track the performance metrics for what are called the cut tests. So I have a pretty clear view of that, but there are other choices. There are like what are called micro schools and pods. There's homeschool, home education. There are private charter school arrangements, private school academies, those kinds of things. There are lots of choices out there. And a lot of people are making that choice. Hoorah, that's awesome. I hope that their children find a good education, because education is the key that opens all doors. I love that expression. But also, in a sort of a similar way, in the healthcare and sort of our personal physical health realm, we have choices. We're being steered toward these big, mega globalist hospital arrangements where you have some sort of giant, huge, I have one, actually several near me, that are these they've hundreds of buildings, and they're pretty looking. They're actually beautiful. The architecture is gorgeous and all that stuff. But the care of health, I think, is sorely lacking. And it's really a drive, I believe, directly connected to pharmaceutical firms. So pharmaceutical firms have their hand in the cookie jar, if you will, capturing people in this funnel and getting people caught up in this lifestyle of taking more and more and more pills, and not really thinking about the health and well-being of their sort of the choices they make, the foods that they eat, their level of exercise and activity that they get, all those kinds of things. I hate to sound facetious, but I think that there's something to the argument that those firms that benefit financially from poor health are the ones that are turning a blind eye to other parts of our lives. So just as we see that there are publishing firms and technology firms and those kinds of groups that have influence on public education, government schools, they exert influence. And I don't think that we can make the argument that they have the objective of prepared, competent, educated children at heart. And I don't believe that in the healthcare realm, we have pharmaceutical firms and hospital systems and how murky and conjoined they are truly advocating for and working toward the health of the individual, which brings me to finance. The same thing holds true in the world of finance. If we are fearful, and if we feel that the earth is unsteady and we're on shaky ground, then people are going to sort of make bad choices and allow their money to be funneled into these things. Or we have a lot of knee-jerk people out there who are just afraid of the whole thing, and they pull out and either go to cash or precious metals. And I don't think that's the answer either. And yes, there are plenty of people out there who are like, move all your money into this precious metal, and they're a little disclaimer on the bottom of their page that they make money when you do that. It can be part of your portfolio, but it shouldn't be the answer, because just like selling some sort of magic pill, here, you're going to take this pill or these 10 pills and then you'll be healthy. Just like that in the world of finance, the people who were saying, just move all your money over here into this thing, they're selling you short and they're doing it for profit. Don't listen to those people. But then comes in sort of the angel and the devil. Do we give into the fear and allow some bad thing to be done to us, to our money, to our children, to our lifestyle, to our investments? Or are we the type that maybe try to find hope and try and find and create encouragement? That, I believe, is that whole angel and devil conversation behind creating parallel economy. So we talk about creating a parallel economy, and in my book, in my worldview, what that is taking money out of those far left woke managers, taking it away from them because they're clearly have no interest in American values, in Western civilization, Western values, Judeo-Christian principles. They don't have any interest in any of that. So that they've, as we've talked about in the past, the big thing that's being done now is that money is going into not just globalist and anti-American things, but some of it's even going into our clear competitors. It was found out recently that a big retirement plan. That's my wheelhouse. And this is so frustrating to hear. A big retirement plan was taking the workers' money and putting it into, among other things, a um, a company closely connected to the Chinese Communist Party that was developing munitions and missiles that can be used against the United States and our forces. And that's just maddening. There's so much opportunity here. That's the kind of thing that fear will get you. Being fearful and allowing your money to be caught up in those sorts of things and not paying attention, not listening to things like these unwoke discussions that we have that work hard to uncover those kinds of things and encourage people to get their money away from those types of managers. Those are woke, far left, really bad people that have our harm at heart. I believe that clearly, and I think that at least with some of them, I can look at their actions and clearly point out that they have not just they're not oblivious. These are people that have clear malicious intent, at least some of them, that are profiting off of damaging and hurting America and fighting our interests. But let's pursue that one step further and let's talk to that angel, not the devil. They're done with the devil. Shoo, let's wipe that devil off the shoulder and talk to the angel, because on that angel side of like hope and enthusiasm and courage, on that side, there are options. And I'm proud and honored to be part of a big group of people that's working on shaping options on that side that seed fund small business. And that's not any specific thing. That's really very different than the people out there who are like, yeah, you just be afraid and put all your money into this precious metal. Again, I'm not saying that that can't be part of the answer, but I want to really drive away from that fear and see what it looks like in the world of shaping hope for the future. Because look around you and look at whatever small business remains in your community, and then think about the possibility for new small business. It is an environment right now as we explore this whole global social communism, or whatever the heck you want to call it, Marxist global communism. As that is being explored, their interests are in trying to get basically one group of families. Probably, I've heard that there are like 6 global families that own like 90% of everything and have all this money, whatever. Um, and I think that they would love being at the helm of a global enterprise that controls everything, shipping, supply chain, logistics, whatever. But sorry, that's the devil side again. Back to the angel. What if we, instead of going through those woke far left managers, we pooled our money together and used that to seed fund and encourage and help local small business to grow and prosper. So in that world, in that arrangement, we're talking about the capital needs of small business. Any one of them, and let's face the reality of that circumstance, and that what I'm considering here in that arrangement. We're talking about building a huge portfolio. My vision personally and what I'm exploring is trying to create that kind of like on a county by county basis. I'm starting with a few that are really ready to go, and we have great patriots and great patriot businesses, um, patriotic small local businesses. I use the example of like farm to table. That's a good example, but I mean, barber shops and um, uh, uh, lawn care, you name it. They all need capital, and we, on the hope side of the equation, we should be talking about pooling our money to get those businesses to success. That is the opposite of what the global communists want. That's us being hopeful and creating and shaping our own future, kind of leaning into, or I guess away from, that fear mongering that's everywhere. I hope you will consider those thoughts as we continue to grow and develop new answers to a better, brighter future. And in the immortal words of a great um, politician, among other things, a great person I won't name by name because he's got a triggering name for many. The best is yet to come. Thanks for listening. I'm Jonathan Broadbent, your host of UnWoke.Academy. Stay tuned for the next exciting episode.